Welcome to this Community Media special presentation as we look at the issues facing Adams County's housing market. I'm Zeb Eckert. We take you to a conference that was held on September 20th by At Home, a consortium of organizations in Adams County working together to address affordability, not only for renters, but for homeowners as well. Take a look at these statistics. 26% of homeowners in the county are income constrained, housing burdened. 42% of Adams County renters are housing burdened as well. And the county's vacancy rate for rentals is astonishingly low at just 1%. This is an issue facing the county as it seeks new ways to grow, and we take you now to that conference featuring local developers, community organizations, and activists as they seek to address Adams County's housing issues.
I am so very appreciative to have this panel here today. It is a huge amount of wisdom up here, and I appreciate that everyone took time out of their very, very busy schedules to come and help us today. So I am going to, their bios again are on the sheet, but I'm going to have them tell you their name, just how they're involved in housing and why it's important to them. Can I start with you?
Sure.
Please.
So I'm Art Bethel, and I'm with ACMB Bank. I'm celebrating 2 years with them tomorrow, actually, and I lead their mortgage division. I've been in mortgages for 22 years. Started doing this business with a little broker out of West York. And my primary, because I'm bilingual, born and raised in Puerto Rico, I worked a lot with the Hispanic community and a lot of low to moderate income families. I then was transferred to Baltimore when BB&T acquired us, and I started working with CRA lending, where Baltimore, 78% of the population is low to moderate income, and I was helping them find homes. So my passion has always been really focusing on the low to moderate income families, because they tend to be left out. And that's how I knew the statistics on all the information, because I'm always looking at that, because that's a challenge for us to get funding when we don't have any low income tracts, and we still have a lot of low income families. So keep that in mind.
Hi, my name is Nick Baer, and I'm with Prime Home Real Estate. My background is construction and real estate, and my passion is really for people, and when people find good housing, whether it's affordable or market rate, I believe that communities flourish, and so that's me.
My name is Chad Collie. I am almost a 20-year resident of Adams County. I'm from Kentucky originally. Have worked with my hands most of my life, so I'm a working man, I would classify myself as. In regards to how I got involved with At Home in Adams County, mostly through community efforts. I met Megan. We started talking about housing and threw some ideas out and really started digging into some of the problems that exist here and think that we can help solve some of those problems and help low to moderate income families here in the county.
I'm Harlan Lawson. I work for the Adams County Planning Office. My title there is Economic Development Specialist, but I started out as a comprehensive planner. And so within that scope of responsibilities, it was a natural fit to get involved with At Home, and I've been working with At Home since its inception. Beyond the professional side, I grew up in Maryland. I went to school in Virginia and moved here in 2018 after looking for a home for about a year and a half before one became available, and I put an offer on it 2 days after it was listed, and within a week it was mine. And it was necessary for that quick of a turnaround for me to get it up. So I have a little bit of experience as well with the challenge that it is to find housing here in the county.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Davis. I'm president of Davis Architecture and Design. I've been involved in the preservation and creation of affordable housing for the last 35 years. We also have a connection to Gettysburg. We had an office here in 2007. 2008. People remember that time. It was pretty difficult to find work, but we made it through that year, and we designed Misty Ridge. It was the first project we did up here. My office has done about 15,000 affordable units around the Mid-Atlantic area. I'm past chair of the Affordable Housing Council in Frederick, Maryland. I'm past chair of the Habitat affiliate in Frederick as well.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Zahler with Luminesce. We're fairly new to Adams County. My relationship developed over the years. I was the executive director of the Franklin County Housing Authority, and we started a housing development arm called Luminesce a long, long time ago. And we have relationships with Stephanie McAwee at the Housing Authority in Pigpie, and then of course Megan, because staff is both in Franklin and Fulton counties. And we've done, our focus is creating affordable housing. And Stephanie and Megan met with me, gosh, I don't even know, 3 years ago. It was before COVID, I can tell you that. That seems to be the dividing point of our lives, before and after. And we were able to secure financing through the low-income housing tax credit to do 36 townhome units at Misty Ridge. It's called Meadowview Townhomes. We certainly have a passion for affordable housing and trying to find a way to make it work, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's very hard. It takes a long time, but golly, it's worth it when you're done. And when we talk a little bit more, I'll just talk about some of our experiences at Meadowview.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Claude Hicks. I'm with HACC Mid-Atlantic out of Lancaster. I've been in affordable housing for 30 years and have developed over 280 projects up and down the East Coast. I've been fortunate to have worked in what I have a passion for and have been successful in doing that. Affordable housing is a complicated, complex, and frustrating business. There's only, I think, 3 of my friends who are still in it after 30 years. Everybody else either went to do market rate housing or lost so many brain cells that they just quit. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about housing. It is not a conversation that you are having by yourselves. We are having it all across the state and all across the country. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Are you all able to hear them down here? Yeah? Yes. Okay, great. Wonderful. I'm going to start with Harlan just to get a sense of what the housing projects that you're seeing in the county.
Yeah, so broadly across the county, we continue to see proposals for single-family detached dwelling projects. That's been historically the pattern of development for us. We do have a few townhome and attached housing projects here in the county, but mostly it's been single-family detached, and we continue to see that, especially in the eastern and southeastern portions of the county. More specifically, though, we have seen a recent influx in proposals that include apartment buildings, specifically within Strabane Township along the Route 30 corridor. We have 3 current proposals for those. We, as a county planning department, having seen a lot of the proposals that we get through the county, are always a little skeptical of just saying that all of these will get built. It is pretty common for us to receive proposals where 20, 25 years have passed and the project has not moved forward for a variety of reasons here in the county. But we do have these three larger attached housing proposals within Strabane Township that would all together encompass around 1,200, 1,300 units of apartment building units. The interesting part about that is it really does rely on the local land use control and what's allowed by the respective townships and boroughs. We see it's no surprise that Strabane Township seems to be where these are locating. At least the types of proposals that we are getting proposed within the central portion of the county. We've always had a little bit more activity in the eastern and southeastern portion of Adams County, based on its proximity to Hanover Borough. The development pressure is a little bit more over there. So yeah, in terms of the type of housings and where we're seeing them, did you ask me about the pricing yet?
No, but you can go ahead and talk about that.
Sorry, jumping forward a little bit. It's all sort of related. It's a challenge for us to foresee what the pricing points of these new development proposals are. We can estimate in a variety of ways. We can look at the developer of the project, and we can look to see their past development history, the types of, if they have, you know, past projects, where they are, what did they look like, are they a good match to what they're also proposing in Adams County, or if they've already built in Adams County, are they a good match, what did they charge for that project, how long ago was it, how has the market shifted, and we can, you know, estimate through that. But then there's also the socioeconomic stuff that Megan did a really good job of already describing. I have a few numbers that, if I'm able to, that I'll take out the redundant ones that were already kind of mentioned in the beginning. But you know, comparing our county's market to York County, the reason I'm choosing York County as a comparison is because the Realtors Association of York and Adams County is able to provide us apples-to-apples comparison of our housing numbers to York County. So York County is always a good comparison for that, to also look at some of these other income level data between York and Adams, knowing that those housing figures are created by the same source. Also, York County is where we have most of our residents traveling to work. Megan mentioned that 68% of Adams County residents leaving Adams County to go find a higher paying job, more than likely in a county around us. The majority of those people are going to York County. When you look at the quarterly census for employment and wages, which is the source that I use for income data more specifically, the Adams County averages wages of around $46,124. So an Adams County worker is making around $46,000 compared to a York County worker who's making almost $10,000 more than that, $55,796. So those, depending on your data source, those numbers will fluctuate a little bit, but the overall relationship of Adams County being about $10,000 or $9,000 less in its average wage to York County holds true. That being said, it doesn't reflect in the cost of living. The cost of living in Adams County is very equal to York County, if not a little bit more for certain types of familial arrangements. The average sale price of our homes here in Adams County are around $280,000. The average sale price of homes in York County, according to the Realtors Association, is $244,000. So a difference of about $35,000 less in York County, even though the wages in York County are that much higher. And so we are receiving, the majority of the proposals that we've received that actually get built, the prices are reflecting what you're seeing in that data coming from the Realtors Association. That's the market, that is the current real estate market here in Adams County. And so the challenge, as Megan alluded to earlier, is that our market at a price point is higher than the actual residents. There's a disconnect between what our residents are actually able to afford versus the market that is out there, that's predominantly coming from people that we're attracting from other areas, from other higher salaried areas. So we're insinuating, based on these factors, that a lot of these new proposals that we're getting in are probably not going to be affordable. And for a price point for some of these units that we're seeing in Strabane Township, for example, looking at some of the developers where they have projects elsewhere, it's going to be around a $1,200, $1,300 rent price for these units. And when you look at, or above, 12 or 1,300 maybe for a one-bedroom, and looking at that based on the workforce makeup that we have here in Adams County, it's just not affordable.
Thank you, Harlan. Arthur, do you want to talk just about what you're seeing from a lending perspective?
Sure, and I don't want to contradict anything that Harlan said, just to add to it. A couple things. You're looking at individual income, correct? And we're looking at household income, and the median incomes that you showed earlier were in the 80,000 range, because on average you have 2 people that provide that. So I just want to make sure that we're not contradicting each other. We know where the numbers are coming from. But from us, the same thing, it holds true. 279,900, 280,000 is the average per RAAC. That number is pretty high, because last year it was around 235,000. So that gives you, Adams County was one of the counties that suffered the most as far as increasing in values. That has also a lot to do with people offering more than what they're worth, which has created a bigger problem for us, because we go by the appraisal or the sales price, whichever is less. And so unfortunately, there was a history, and that was a challenge for us in the areas. The other statistic that you don't know about is, on average, prior to COVID and prior to all the housing demand that we've seen, 1 out of 7 people paid cash for their homes. Last year in the country, it was 1 out of 3. And a lot of those cash were investment groups together investing in that. The concern that we have is that next year, those will be dumped. Those houses will be dumped because they're not being rented. The rents are too high. Those kind of things that you're going to see. We have some of that in the county, not a lot, but we're keeping our eyes and ears open for that. As far as the housing inventory, right now there's about 2 months supply. That's per HACC as far as what's being sold out there. But again, at the higher price. So it's going to be a little bit tough. We don't have homes for low-income families in the area. We don't. I mean, it's just very few. We've helped putting folks in double wide type because they can afford that. Some of the prefab home or what I call manufactured homes, which are built in a factory and then brought in, they call them boxes, but it's a house. Those are now as expensive as the stick built. They're not as, there used to be an advantage there. So, but the challenge and I'll let the builders talk about that, is the price of materials went up pretty high and the supply was really short. I myself had a bathroom redone. It took 6 months because they couldn't get the grout, and it was just hand-colored grout. So that's the kind of challenges that we face. But per the U.S. Census, a question that was asked is who's buying the houses in the area. You talked about it. It's an area where people like to retire to because it's cheaper to live here, and it's it's nice. And so about 27% of the population in Adams County is the ages of 55 and 64. And then above that, you have, it's about, I don't have that percentage, I apologize, but 36 to 41%, 20 to 44 years old is about 28%. And those are the folks that we need to target as far as making housing available for. That's really what we need to focus in growing that. And so, one statistic I'll share with you, which I don't have for Adams County, but people that rent in DC, 70% of them cannot afford to buy a house in DC. 70%. And in Frederick County, which I work with, we have a bank there that we own, it's 49% of the people that rent in Frederick County cannot afford to buy homes in Frederick County. So what we're going to see is, as we found out through COVID, a lot of people are working from home, right? So they're moving out, further out, and you're going to see an influx of that. But we have to make housing available. And how do we do that? And that's really the challenge. And then interest rates. We've been looking. I could put you in a house 30-year, in the beginning of last year at 2.5 on a 30-year purchase. Today it's at 6.375. Okay, and that's that. If you could afford it last year, you probably can't afford it this year with that rate. So those are the challenges. Prices went up, interest rates went up. Now we need to figure out how do we help folks balance that out a little bit. So, and that's pretty much it. As far as what makes affordable housing for us, you're right. We don't look at utilities, but we look at your gross income. And Freddie and Fannie, as well as HUD, like us to stay between 28 and 33% of your housing payment. And for your total housing, meaning that any other debts such as credit cards, alimony, child support that you're paying, car payments, things like that, all that total should stay around 41% combined with your housing payment. And then we're saying the rest, you should be able to pay utilities and food and things like that. So that's what we look at. We can go to 43% on that, but we try not to go that high. Okay, so that's pretty much. You had a question.
Yeah. What is the foreclosure rate now?
That's a good question. It's not as high as it was. It was. I think it's dropped down. It's not as high. I don't have the exact percentage, but it has dropped down. And I think some people getting some assistance during COVID helped that. But we're concerned what it's going to be next year.
Would you consider we're in a housing bubble now?
We're in a housing bubble for the sense that we're not seeing people offering more. We're not seeing the average, like the average market days were as little as 2 or 3 days. In Adams County, it got as low as 5. I think last month it was up to 9 or 10 days, meaning that houses are starting to stay on the market longer. So yes, I think it's starting to shift.
Yep, there's something that I think is important to know. Right now, during COVID, there's rental assistance that's being paid out to large numbers of folks, and there was mortgage assistance through PHFA. And that has artificially kept, thank goodness, right, foreclosures and evictions down. But all of that funding will be coming to an end in the next year. And so we don't know what that's doing. We also know for rentals, that's allowed landlords to raise their rent because, so again, it may be artificially high, but in Adams County, you'll be able to get somebody. So if somebody moves out, you'll be able to get somebody to pay rent. So it's tough. And one thing that I just think is an interesting, you're talking about 48% for the kind of, including the other bills. What was the?
43%.
43%. So.
Not 48.
He's going to laugh in a second. Because we run the HACC program, and so when someone comes in, we have to show that they can be self-sufficient after we help them. And so we've had to increase that number to 75% because we couldn't show that people could sustain themselves with any less number because they're low income. We wouldn't even be able to spend the funding. Crazy, right?
Right. The last thing I'll say is, on the average of $279.9, if you put 20% down at $6.375, taxes and insurance included, your payment would be just under $2,000 a month. If you remember the statistics as show you, we couldn't put people in homes below that certain income. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. So just frightening thoughts.
I have a lot more statistics, but I don't want to bore you.
No, I'm sure we'll come back. And Nick and Chad, I don't know if you guys want to add some pieces from the building, and then I'll move over kind of to, I know, Nick, you kind of follow development and building and real estate, so any expertise, and Chad, how do you like?
Amen to the point you made on material prices. Just to, you'll be seeing some pictures of a duplex that we did this past year, and so we started planning for that pre-COVID with a set budget. Just to give you an example, our framing package pre-COVID, we were all in at like $42,000. That's for labor and material. After material prices spiked, we were at 40 plus for material and a little around 20 for labor. So it went up about $20,000 just like that, due to the material shortages and things like that. So, and that's just one line item in the building process. So material, I will tell you, and when I speak later, I'll tell you there's 3 basic points to building, and that's land, labor, and materials. And so when we think about building houses, affordable housing, we need to think about building houses more affordably, and I'll come at it from that perspective.
I would just say that from my perspective, what Harlan was referring to, the 3 larger apartment complexes coming into the area, I'm pretty surprised that they've been able to make it work with the banks, considering material costs and labor costs in this time, you know, based on the scale of building that they're doing. So I would say kudos to the developers who are actually, you know, going through these projects, even though, you know, material prices continue to rise and material availability continuing to be an issue. I say kudos to those guys, because it really is a tough market to be in, and in order for them to be able to bring housing to Adams County, it's a huge undertaking, and quite frankly a huge risk. So
thank you. Community media is filming us, so I'm going to move their microphone over here. So just one second. I'm going to grab this one.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Convenient that they sat the way they did. So for our developers, can you tell us what makes some, well first I know most of you are all doing affordable housing. So tell us the complexities of doing affordable housing, and then what are the considerations you have to think about when you're looking to do development?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. That's a loaded question. I could talk for an hour on that topic. When we approach a community about affordable housing, first thing we have to do is talk to community leadership and find out what they see as their needs and make sure we can address the needs they identify. You don't, when you know, I'm sure all of you in this room know when we talk about affordable housing, people will go, oh, Section 8 housing, and I know that is like taking your fingernails down the chalkboard to me, what that may or may not mean, and you know, they don't want this, and you have this whole NIMBY thing going on. So it's really important that you start out with your community leadership and getting the buy-in from them, and that can be all sorts of different avenues to do that. Then we start honing in on, well, where? And in Adams County, that's our real challenge, as you know. And you have to look at zoning and land use. I mean, that's first. What we never do is go into an area that's not properly zoned. I'm never going to go somewhere and say, oh, I need zoning changed. Forget it. That is never going to happen, most likely. And then we start looking at things, well, where are places that are accessible? So if you're doing a senior property, you have to, where's the health care, where's the restaurants, where's the pharmacies, where's the doctors, where's the transportation? Because all of that matters. Because as you noticed, the income levels are pretty low. So it's important that people have access to services. If it's more of a, we call it general occupancy or family property, then you're also looking at those things. But then you're also looking at, well, where's employment? Where are there schools? You know, what impact are you going to have on the school district? You have to be speaking with the school district as well. So you take all of that into consideration first, and from there we go and we try to talk. Then we come up with a concept, and then we go to the municipality, whatever it is, and their planning department and their administration, and you're like, here's what we're looking at. And we try to go in with sketch plans and ideas to get the feedback so that we know what challenges we're going to have just even going in. And this is all done up front. So identifying land is a huge challenge. You have to find a landowner who's willing to work with you, who has a passion for what we do and a vision. Because it doesn't happen. You're not going to buy that property. How many days did you say properties were turning? No. And honestly, realistically, it could be 15, 18 months before we can make a purchase, before we can actually purchase the land. And there's a lot of reasons for that, from timing, from applications, and where we get our funds. So that's a real, that would be the first steps in trying to develop some housing. Did I answer your question? Okay.
I'm not a developer, I'm an architect, but I get to watch the developers go through their gyrations to get projects built. I want to reiterate what she was saying. You've got to have the political will to get these things done. If you don't have it, forget it. It's not going to happen. We've experienced that in many jurisdictions that we've worked in. Again, if you've got strong political support, things can get done. If you don't, then things are going to be very difficult, and the developers are going to turn around and walk away because it's just going to be too difficult. One of the big things that hopefully we can talk about a little bit in the future here is incentives. Again, to me, that's the way you get affordable housing built, whether it be market rate, whether it be rental. You've got to give incentives to the developers to make that work. Otherwise, there's no reason why I'm going to build an affordable single family that I'm going to sell for break even, maybe make at a loss, or make a small profit when I can develop market rate stuff at $290,000, and I know in some jurisdictions you can sell those with no problem whatsoever. So there's no incentive for me as a developer to build moderately priced dwelling units unless I have an incentive. And I don't know in Adams County if they do. I know in Fairfax County we have the thing called moderately priced development units. Are you all familiar with those? No. What happened, I don't know, this was probably 20 or 30 years ago, the county government in Frederick said, okay, this is an important thing for us, but we're going to extract money from the for-profit market rate developers to help with building affordable for-sale housing. So what they did is they gave them a payment in lieu of. So the market rate developers, once they hit 100 units, 12.5% of the units that they continue to develop have to be affordable, moderately priced. Or they can pay a fee in lieu of. And that's what they wind up doing. Right now it's about $26,000. We're having a study to see how we can up that. But at least it's some money in the pipeline that then can be used for affordable housing for sale. Or it can be used for providing some bridge financing for affordable housing development. Okay, so I don't know if that's, if Adams County has that or not, but it's something that should be considered, because then you've got some incentive and you've got some money to do that.
Do you know if anyone in Pennsylvania is doing that?
Good question. I don't know. I'm also going to get back to, as far as timing goes, from the minute they start their process to the minute they close for the affordable housing side, it's money out of pocket. They don't get reimbursed for that money. That money, not yet. When you close, you do. When you close. So the issue there is the quicker you can get them to close, the quicker you can get the project up and running. And that depends on planning, review, permits, whatever. One of the things that maybe you can think about is, again, incentivizing a shorter time frame for affordable housing projects. So when one comes in, it might go on a fast track. So instead of taking, I don't know, in Frederick, it's almost a year or 2 years to get something developed. What if you shorten that down to 6 months or 3 months? And the other thing that's happening now too is because things are taking so long to close, interest rates are going up and it's affecting their financing. I know in a couple of projects we're working on, they're really close to walking away because they can't make the numbers work. So getting things done quickly is really important for the affordable housing side. And I've got a bunch more incentives that we can talk about. Perfect. Go ahead.
We look first at the community. And beyond the stakeholders in the community, we look for partners. Someone that's based in the community, that understands the community. We then look at need. What are our market studies showing us? Is the need heavily family? Is it heavily senior? Adams County is the recipient of what in York County is being called the gray wave. Coming from Baltimore, people who were taxed on their retirement, they are not taxed that way in Pennsylvania. They came to Shrewsbury, then they came into York. They pushed all of the people needing affordable housing literally out of the market. And that will continue to come your way as people realize it's a nice place to live. I can still get to the grandkids in Baltimore pretty easily. And it's a nice, and I don't get my retirement taxed. We then look at going to the municipal officials to talk to them about what they think. So every municipal official that I've talked to in 30 years, we're not naive. We know that the three terrible questions that municipal officials listen to are, what are we going to do about falling tax revenue? What are we going to do about the fire that is caught on fire in the building downtown? And there's somebody here to talk to you about affordable housing. They really, really, really don't want to talk about affordable housing because they know the stigma in their community. They know it's an uphill battle. They know that they need it. They know the need is there. They want to help, but they also understand the political backlash and the work that needs to be done to try and tell people what affordable housing is and what it is not. It is not what was built before 1986 by the government. It is not public housing. Every single development that we have developed under the tax credit program is a private partnership. And some of those limited partners you work with every day. Fulton Bank, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase. Virtually all of the Fortune 500 has invested in tax credit projects across the country. So it's the perception that we need to change, the perception of who's going to live there. So I actually, in a conversation yesterday, had to dispel the belief that the proposed senior development that we were talking about was not going to be filled with a bunch of 75-year-olds who were pot smoking and terrible people who would never pay their rent. Our average senior resident is a 71-year-old woman who was married, had a home, husband died, could no longer afford the home, primarily because of real estate taxes, was without a home, and then was looking at where can I live on my fixed income. There are no opportunities. That is our average senior resident. And that resident usually stays with us until health dictates they can't, or they pass away. Last year, in HGC's portfolio, we have 72 properties and 3,800 units. The number one reason people left our properties was they passed away. But I can tell you also, 19 of our properties in Lancaster County have a 3-year waiting list. 5 of them, the waiting list is closed because it's so long that it's inconceivable for somebody to get there. So what we look for is, does the area want us? Does the municipal government support us? Then we look at feasibility. Can we actually build here? I will reiterate what you have heard already. 34 of the 35 projects that were awarded by PHFA in 2021 are infeasible because construction costs have escalated between $2 and $5 million per project. So all of that we have to take into account. All of that we have to figure out how to manage. An average affordable housing development takes us 3.5 to 4 years from the time that we did as an idea to the time we open the doors. HDC spends on average about $300,000 per development that it puts at risk. So for every one development that I say go, there's 5 that we have turned down and 3 that we've spent real money on. So it is an investment by the developer. This is what we do. But we also want to know that when we build it, when we occupy it, that the community wants it. And it becomes a part of the community. That is a critical part of what we do. It cannot be a standalone apartment building. It has to be a part of the community. We currently have 4 applications for every 1 unit that we develop. We just opened in Fredericksburg a 52-unit family community. We had 100 applications per day for 3 months. We were leased before we finished building. So those are the kinds of challenges that we're looking at. And we're like every other business. We are a business. There is no charity that comes and hands us a big check. We have to make deals work. We have to sustain ourselves. We've been around for 50 years, but every day is a struggle. So as you consider affordable housing, I would ask you that you think first about what it's not, and think more about the people that you know in your community that are struggling for housing, that are living in substandard housing, that are living with the kids because they have to, because there's no other alternative for them. And take all of those things into account as you have this discussion about housing.
Can I just follow up? I happen to be sitting between 2 individuals who have been involved in developing huge numbers of units. Did you say 3,800 total? I don't know. We're just a little nonprofit. Okay, we're like small potatoes. So we put in 1 application. That's all we do. And then, so we do invest. You have to have capital. You have to have cash to get started. Now, we have to have a line of credit at the bank because we don't have a lot of cash, quite frankly. So we're very intentional about where we choose to go and how we're going to move forward. So I'll have people come to me and say, oh, I want you to build a senior deal in Fulton County. Well, there is no, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't people who have a need, but there aren't enough people. So, you know, we have to walk away from them. So we're very intentional. We we have seen a huge need in Adams County, as Megan and Stephanie told me 3 years ago, for our family housing. Meadowview, we're building 36 townhomes. To your point, I have so many, we don't even advertise. We have so many applications. We cannot process them. My gosh, we're like telling our staff, you must get the ones that applied in January, or excuse me, May. We have to get them through. We're now working in June. So it's a huge problem. We recognize it as a huge issue. There's a huge need, and we want to do another project here in Adams County because it is showing me that the need is significant. And we have partnered. We are very fortunate. The Housing Authority, Adams County Housing Authority, allocated 8 project-based vouchers for the site. There's a reason there's only 8, and it's related to funding, and you don't want to have to pay Davis-Bacon wage rates, so you have to keep the number of units to a certain number. There's all these logistical reasons for that. But 8 is wonderful. So that lets us serve people who are at that 30% or below level, okay? And then we're open to taking anyone with a housing choice voucher, and quite frankly, we have quite a few folks coming to us with vouchers to live at Meadowview, in addition to those who don't have a voucher. So the need is significant. The challenge to developing starts, the timeline is a huge issue. You have to find a site, you have to find an owner who's going to work with you. And as you've heard alluded to, construction costs have gone out of the window. At Meadowview, we had a $800,000 construction deficit. Now this was 2 years ago, mind you, okay? And in order to see, and that was after we'd already done some reworking things to reduce costs. And luckily at the time, the federal government passed money through to the states, that passed money through to PHFA. They filled that gap for us. We have another project, you just mentioned the 21, we have a 21 LIHTC deal that was a low-income housing tax credit deal approved. It's in Shippensburg, it's a senior project. Our deficit is $1.8 million. Now, that's staggering, staggering. Luckily, there's funds coming through the ARPA program that is going to fill that gap. Otherwise, we would never, the project would have imploded. They would implode. So there's so when I say it's not for the faint of heart, it's a hard process, but it's well worth it, believe me. It's just getting there is tough. It's getting there is tough. But at the end of the day, in Adams County, in Cumberland Township, where the Misty Ridge area is, that has quite a bit of units. Stephanie, how many do you have there? Like 120 units, something like that? And we've just added 36. It's a beautiful, if you've not driven out there, you need to drive out there. It's beautiful. You would never know that there were people, working families and seniors and people with disabilities who are making, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 living there. Honestly, you wouldn't. We have garages, we have 3-bedroom units, they're townhomes. I know Pick Pie's units are, we all blend in very nicely. So it's an important, it's a real gem for your community, really. And hopefully we can find ways to do more of it.
And maybe we should have started with some definitions. Everybody familiar with low-income housing tax credits? Anybody want to raise their hand? Are they familiar? No. All right, I can give you some history then. 1986, Ronald Reagan put into place the low-income housing tax credit program through HUD. It is a federal program that provides tax credits to large corporations, wealthy individuals, insurance companies, banks for their CRA stuff, and it allows individuals, whatever, these companies to trade off, buy tax credits to reduce their tax burden at a discount. Okay, so it's a win-win. It's the only way that affordable housing rental gets funded. I had a person come up and ask me, why don't you just go out to the marketplace and get funding just like everybody else? We could do that, but then it's called market rate housing. So 1986's program was put together. It's a federal program, but it's initiated and doled out by each state. Each state has their own housing authority or some sort of mechanism to move these funds forward. PHFA is in Pennsylvania. We have Department of Housing and Community Development in Maryland and DC. In Virginia, it's Virginia Housing. So all these places are set up to, again, dole out this money. So you have two programs. You have a 9% and you have a 4%. 4% are a bond deal, which basically is threshold, meaning if you meet a certain threshold, you get the funding. So typically, I know in Maryland, I don't know how it is in Pennsylvania, that provides a lot of senior housing, typically from 70, yeah,
it's in urban settings.
From about 70 to 120 units plus or minus at the 4%. 9% are competitive, so that means everybody in the state competes for this money, and you get points, and it's very competitive. It's a difficult process, but once you get those 9%, they cover about 80 to 90% of your equity for the development. So you only have a gap of maybe, what, 10 or 20%, maybe a little bit more, that they have to go out and find financing for. So that's the money that they want. However, it's competitive, so it's not guaranteed. And when you get a 9% award, everybody gets very excited because it is a significant amount of money. So those are the two pots of money that you can go after. Again, it's a very competitive process. Developers, you should see when they put in their applications, there are about 3 or 4 binders that are about this thick, that it's amazing. So that's sort of the background of the tax credit deals. And it is the only way to fund affordable rental housing.
And just to jump off of that a little bit, so what he's saying is you sell these credits to some investor. So you mentioned Chase Bank, we have one with Boston Financial, RBC, Royal Bank Canada. Smaller banks will get involved. So what they're doing is really, they're giving you equity. So they're filling in the cost to build. So you, honestly, a $12 million, it's $12 million, you can have our 40 unit senior, if you can imagine, is $12 million. The construction costs are $12 million. So they're putting in 12, 10, 12, $11 million. So what that does is it reduces, the name of the game is reduce your need for mortgages, for loans. Because the only income that comes into your properties is what the tenants can pay in rent. And we're charging low rents, okay? So we have to make the property operationally sound for a 15-year period. I'll get to you in a minute. And then, so bringing these dollars to the table, this is how it works. It's a public-private partnership. We sell the credits. The investor, we form a limited partnership. The investor gets all those credits, which is why they want in, because they're making money, of course. And then we're getting an avenue to develop these beautiful homes and keep the rents low. And they are incredibly, incredibly, incredibly competitive. But it can be done, because we do it, we're just little. So it can be done. And that's just one way. You can do smaller programs using federal home dollars, 2 units, 4 units, 6, I don't know, Stephanie, how many do you guys do? Have you done like 6, 8 units? 6. Is it 6? Yeah. It has to be in that range because there aren't enough home dollars to make it work. That's another whole challenge. But you can do smaller things. The developer doesn't get as much fee for doing that, but organizations who are like us, nonprofits, who are embedded in your community, we're willing to do that because it's for the good of the community. It's another way of helping find affordable housing niches for your community.
So now you understand why being an affordable housing developer should not be on any of your bucket lists. So for those of you who are now swimming in, oh my God, this is a surreal world. It is a surreal world. But think about it simply. Think about when you went to buy your house. If you were fortunate enough to be able to buy one, you put 20% down, 80% was your mortgage. We put 80 to 90% down. And that 10% mortgage payment allows us to make sure that we can meet our operating costs at the lowest rents that we can charge. two important things. One is we're dictated to on the rents. We cannot just arbitrarily say, hey, I think I can get $800, so I'll charge it. We have caps. And secondly, when we make a commitment to an affordable housing development, we're making that commitment for 35 years. It must be affordable for 35 years. That is the one thing that I heard last night in Millersville. Well, what if you just change this to market rate in 5 years? We are restricted legally from doing that. So when we say that the development needs to be a part of the community, it is going to be a part of the community for at least 35 years.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Okay. I am working with seniors now, 70, 80 years old, who are losing their housing. I have a few who have been stuck in hotels since COVID and still haven't found housing. So with everything going up, the only thing that hasn't gone up is your salary. How are we going to get them into housing now? Another thing, for Luminous, do you have someone who actually looks at the senior applications that are coming in? And do you disqualify them based on their nest egg that they have saved up?
No. Okay, let me start again. When we do a general occupancy property, we usually do 2 and 3 bedrooms. So unless the seniors have 2 people in the household, they're generally not able to afford the rent, okay? If we do a senior property, we do primarily 1-bedroom units and a few 2 bedrooms. So that's built for the needs of those folks. If they have a nest egg, there is a calculation that's done when you're doing your income verification, and it's just it's called imputed income off of that money. So if you have a house and you sell your house, that money that you might have, maybe it's 10,000, 20, I don't know, whatever you may have, will not make you ineligible from your annual income, because there's a calculation where they impute just a small percentage of that and count that as income towards your calculation. That was a very simplified answer to your question, but in all honesty, it should be fine if they have a nest egg.
Okay, I have a 75-year-old still working, makes probably $56,000 a year, has a nice nest egg set aside. She put in an application and she was denied.
She's probably over income.
Over income.
Probably. If it's a single, is it a single person?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be over income.
So you are describing
Yeah.
a crisis that Pennsylvania is seeing.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania has the 3rd largest number of seniors in the country, only below Florida and California. The senior population in Pennsylvania in the last 3 years is the only demographic that is growing, not shrinking. And the income level of seniors in the state of Pennsylvania over the last 3 years has dropped by 14%. So if you take all of those factors, and then on top of it, PHFA is a quasi-governmental entity. It has to report to Washington on all the good that it does. It gets more credit building a family unit because there's more people that are affected than it gets building a senior unit. So in order to win on a senior housing, you have to load it with so many points and so many bells and whistles and so many services, and it's almost unbelievable in order to get PHFA's attention and to get them to fund it. So you are not talking about anything that every county and every municipality in the state is not talking about. You know, the event of senior homelessness has risen in Pennsylvania by 35%. Those are people who were working, thought they could retire, and end up without a home, without any place to go. Look no further than Lancaster, our incredible downtown that's been in all of the newspapers and ranked highly across the country, is experiencing senior homelessness like it has never seen before. So as you are talking about how you're going to approach this, And what you're going to do, your issue is not getting smaller, and it is not stabilizing. It is getting worse by the day.
I just looked it up on our website. A single person maximum income is to be eligible for these projects I'm discussing and over here is $37,980. That's for one person. So if your client is at 50 couple thousand, they're not eligible. So, and they're probably not eligible for a housing choice voucher either. See, they're not eligible. So there's this other whole bucket of people, which we don't want to ignore in this discussion, who can't afford those $1,300 a month rents. But their over income for our rent for a, well, I don't have a 1 bedroom, for a 2 bedroom is going to be somewhere between $254 and $694.
And you don't want to buy a house.
So that's another bucket of residents in Adams County that have significant housing needs.
Okay. Do you have anyone at all working with just the seniors? I mean, sifting through the application with just the seniors?
I don't think we have many seniors applying for the housing we're developing. I don't know, Stephanie, can you jump in? Because I know you have a lot of senior housing.
We have senior housing, but out, like you said, out like at Misty Ridge, we don't have seniors applying for those.
Because too many bedrooms, right?
There's too many bedrooms.
Yeah,
So with your senior
bedrooms.
housing, what's the way, I think you talked about this.
Minimum probably 10 months.
I do.
Longer, yeah.
Okay, but that's a problem now. They are homeless. 70 and 80, they are homeless. When are they going to redefine what homelessness is? I mean, how big is homelessness? I mean, your family members get tired of you too.
We completely agree with you. I know in our shelters, we're seeing more seniors. In my Franklin County shelter, I have 3 that are 65 and older. So yes, we are seeing this. And you're right, we could put them in a house, but they won't be able to afford that house. So we can get them in.
Where are things standing with, I can't even remember what the name is, I know Aging was working on it, where an individual could get a waiver for zoning, echo housing. Where are we standing? Is there any fundings for that? Are we moving along with that at all?
There isn't right now. There's no funding for it right now. That doesn't mean there couldn't be funding, but really what needs to be fixed is the zoning for that. So, and I'm sure some of our folks will talk a little bit about that as we go, because if we could make, and again, where does zoning take place, Arlen, for these kind of decisions?
It takes place at the municipal level. So we have 34 municipalities in Adams County. In Pennsylvania's government, we've had some mentions of Frederick County, Maryland. That's where I grew up. So Frederick County is Frederick City that has its own decision-making ability. It has the county and has a few other incorporated towns. We're a smaller county. We're over, we're 100,000 people here around. Frederick County, for comparison, is about 250, 260,000, I think. But yet we have 34 decision-making entities, and they have maybe 10. So there's a lot more layers of decision-maker. There's many more decision-makers here that influence those types of incentives, which is a challenge.
And then as the developer, we have to know what the zoning. That's why I said that's the first thing we look at is zoning and land use policies in that municipality, whatever it is, or township.
So there is something called an accessible dwelling unit that's being discussed in a lot of municipalities, wherein a landowner, a property owner, would say, okay, I have enough land to put a small 1-bedroom or efficiency building on my land, and my mother-in-law, my father-in-law can live there. Municipalities are struggling with that because their fear is that once mom is no longer here, it will become a rental property on a house that is owned. So there's a lot of discussion about whether that's a feasible concept. The concept of tiny houses is kind of talked about in that accessible dwelling unit discussion. But until you get municipalities to really think about that as a real option, as something that's real, it's probably a long way from being accepted.
And I want to get back to the zoning issue for a moment. What we're trying to do in Frederick County actually is put together legislation that would allow for an affordable housing overlay zone. So I know in all the jurisdictions that we work in, it's very hard to find property to develop. But the idea there with this affordable housing overlay zone would be that if you had a piece of property that wasn't zoned correctly, you could bring this zoning and drop it in over top the property. Frederick County has something, and I don't know about Adams County, they have something similar, but we have an institutional zoning where if you wanted to do a religious institution or something like that, you can bring that zoning. It has to be approved, of course, in public meetings and all, but you could bring that zoning over top. So you were mentioning you wouldn't touch a project that doesn't have zoning. We're involved with a lot of projects that are going through zoning changes, and it takes an enormous amount of time. If there was a quicker way to do it, and we keep talking about timing, if there was a quicker way to do it, it would help the developers look at properties that perhaps weren't going to work initially, but with this new zoning could work in the future.
Yeah. I just also, you mentioned zoning and you mentioned competition from seniors like myself, and but there's also been, especially in Gettysburg recently, there's been competition from vacation rentals who have been sucking up a lot of the available housing, and the borough has been really working on trying to protect the local housing availability while accommodating the tourist industry, and to add to that, the people who work in the tourist industry can't afford to live here. So there's more to the competition, especially in the tourist environment. And I must say the borough's been working on that to try to protect some residential neighborhoods and but still accommodate some tourists.
And all of it brings controversy, right? Because people have private ownerships that they want to be able to use the way they want. All of this is complex. So this is all of the reasons why it makes it so hard to happen. But we have the opportunity to get to know municipal leaders, right? Or to run for office, or to, like, there's a process if we want to make those shifts. It's just, it has to.
So from my perspective, is worked hard and have probably been to thousands of municipal meetings over the past 20 plus years. There are a lot of municipalities that are adding accessory dwelling unit things. They're tying it in to address some of the past practices with extra dwelling units on properties that have not been done without providing utility service, or have been creating conditions that were not livable. They've tied it into the old in-law quarters type of practice, tying it into existing utilities and things like that to try to get some control over how that is now. That creates different issues because then it has to be a relative caregiver, which limits some things. The other thing that I would add is one of the things that we've noticed over the years is there's almost like the get out of jail free card. There's when it comes to development and housing, there's pretty much one of the get out of jail free cards in terms of public acceptance is it 55 plus? If it's 55 plus, all of a sudden all of the opposition falls away. In fact, so many years ago, there was an application for a market rate development where the sitting school superintendent showed up to testify against the project because it would add too many kids to the school. In fact, one of the state, and I kid you not, this was said publicly. One member of the public got up and testified that this was a bad idea because people like sex and wouldn't have kids. and we don't want that. So there, in terms of there's, and multiply that by, that's just one segment. Multiply that by the perception and the equity biases that come into things in terms of, affordable housing, in terms of senior housing, in terms of, young family housing, like the gentleman at the end here mentioned about demographics. There's that perception issue is very, very real. And there are some projects that simplify who's going to be marketed to gets a free pass, whereas other projects get held to different public standards. I.e., there some will not have opposition and others will, regardless of whether it's owned for property, regardless of whether it's in a growth area. We've had some that have been on in growth areas with utilities available that should have gone perfectly, and it falls because of some opposition to who will be marketed through this.
Are there any plans for shared housing?
Shared housing exists in Adams County, so yeah. CVAL, she's working on that, so yeah, it's active in Adams County. It's a rigorous matching process, and we're actively looking for homeowners. That's what we need, homeowners who are willing.
Or they can be renters as well. They don't have to own their home.
Good point. Yeah.
But somebody who has an extra bedroom and is willing to share a common purpose, the host. So we're really trying to recruit hosts. I have plenty of people in need, but I don't have hosts who are willing to open their home.
Is advertising?
Oh, yeah.
But I will always take
suggestions. You guys should have lunch together.
Yeah, that's it.
Great. I'm gonna move this microphone down here. If we could talk about what do you think for affordable housing? What are some things we could do? And I think there's a lot that this group. And I think we can start at the end and then we'll work our way down on affordable housing.
I mean, for me, one of the things is education. I work with a lot of different community groups. In Lancaster, I work with HACC and in Baltimore, various groups, educating people as to what's available. That really helped bring more people into housing, whether it was buying a home or even renting. But not understanding what was available is one of the things that people lack. And I think offering as much education as you can would be one thing. The County of Adams is 100% of Adams County is eligible for USDA lending. That's 100% financed. Yes, there's an income limit in housing income limit, but 69% of the population of the households in Adams County qualify. So there are good programs out there that still exist with 100% financing. There are a lot of veterans that don't understand that they can borrow 100% as well. And if they were hurt and they suffered any kind of disability as a result of their service, in Maryland there's a tax break, there's a tax break here in Pennsylvania, there's things that they can take advantage of that they are not aware of. And that's what we need to do, is better education, I think, helps as well. So that would be one thing.
I would say, in my opinion, it would be taking a step to talk to your municipalities and leaders, to this gentleman's point back here, that the perception is that this type of housing is going to bring a certain people group in, or however you want to say that. And my opinion is that we need to have these conversations with the municipalities, and even go so far as taking our time and investing our time to be a part of those boards and associations to use our own influence to be able to make the change. So that's
I would agree with that. I think we have to overcome a lot of the stereotypes associated before we start to make presentations on that level. Jennifer and I were just talking earlier, you have to start with gaining an appreciation for those people that are going to be living in those houses. Do you want to go out to a nice dinner? You're going to need somebody to serve you. You're going to need somebody to cook that food for you. You want to stay in a nice hotel? You're going to need somebody to clean that room. If it's not clean, we're going to complain, right? If you want a nice house, you're going to need somebody to build it. If you want to go out for, family entertainment, there's needs there for people to serve you. So I think one of the underlying issues here is like a lack of respect for our working class. And so we've got to develop that extensively and then let that be the catalyst for change. Also, to speak to the things that were discussed earlier in regards to accessory dwelling units, I just want to commend those at the Adams County planning level on their diligence in reaching out to municipalities. So William Penn started this state with a lot of wisdom. So, the control is at the local level, but these days it's also kind of turned into the dysfunction of Pennsylvania, and that's what frustrates a lot of people. It's frustrated me a lot. For instance, for accessory dwelling units and the way that they're regulated, every municipality, all 34, generally have different regulations for that. And so if you want to build a house somewhere, you have to first go to the municipality, and then they will have certain regulatory requirements. Some places you can't have under 1,200 square feet, some places 1,400, some allowed down to 600. So you have to have a lot of upfront work that you don't get paid for, right, Bonnie? You have to go meet with people. You have to, tell them what you're trying to do. All of that takes a lot of time, and unfortunately in Pennsylvania, it takes a lot more time than it does in some other states where you have kind of a central county governance. We also, as far as the accessory dwelling units, we were working on the ECHO plan with Megan. It turned into a nightmare as far as regulatory. So sometimes the issue is not with the municipality. In this case, Franklin Township has actually the county's governance in regards to accessory dwelling units, and they will allow accessory dwelling units. They would allow the elder cottage. ECHO housing is elder care housing opportunity. Is that right? Yeah. So they would allow that, but then when we got into looking at feasibility studies, the state governance, the DEP, had regulations that were completely opposite from the local municipality and the county. And so then you're talking about a year of delay, time, money, and then a variance to determine whether or not you can even do that or not. And so we've got to work on streamlining the process at the local level to be able to do all these. We can come up with all the great ideas in this room possible. If we don't handle that, then it's going to take forever. It's going to take more time, more money, and at the same time we're trying to do houses more affordably, right? So.
Yeah, I think you're going to hear a consistent theme here. I had community and government education written down. The community education, I think At Home has a integral part in that, to keep doing the work that At Home is doing, with municipal education as well. I think one thing, from taking a couple points from what you guys have heard from several of the panel speakers and maybe organizing them into an actionable step, we have these incentives that were discussed. There's some creative approaches that are being done across the country to try to curb this problem and curb this issue. And that being said, there's several municipalities. We have this problem of there being 34 decision-making entities out there that would have an influence on this issue. But we have several that are better matches for the types of projects that Bonnie works on, meeting the standards that she has for site selection. She said she's concerned about transportation access, proximity to goods and services, so we can start to look at the municipalities that are better matches for those and focus educational efforts on those municipalities, making them aware of the issue, as we've heard also up here, and then also some of the potential solutions, and starting there, and then it's more of a focused effort, and starting to chip away at this wicked problem that we have.
As far as, I have an anecdotal story that I think is relevant to what we're talking about. We have a project in Brunswick, Maryland, which is a pretty small incorporated city in Frederick County. We've been working on that project here for 6 years now, We've designed it 3 times. The issues were that people didn't really understand what affordable rental housing was. That was the bottom line. They didn't understand that the people that would be renting these are the same people that serve them on the service side, same people that actually may live in naturally occurring affordable housing. If you haven't heard that term before, that's basically where landlords just let their properties go down, don't maintain them, and thus they can reduce their rents. So we spent really 4 years educating people that the people that would be moving in here basically are you. Your community will be able to access these and be able to live in a much nicer environment than you would typically in naturally occurring affordable housing. And one thing that we also had to educate people about is they assume affordable housing is substandard. That was one of the first things somebody said, you're going to build, you know, something really bad and it's not going to last and whatever. In fact, we do market rate as well as affordable. Affordable housing has much greater oversight by the state in certain things that we have to meet that are much higher threshold-wise than standard code. On top of that, they have to be sustainable. So that's another thing, enterprise green communities, or there's a variety of things. So again, these buildings really are better, in my mind, than market rate. So that's something when you go back and talk to people about affordable housing, that's something that you can remind them of. But getting back to, I think on that side, affordable housing provides housing for the service industry. We call it workforce housing, income, what's the word I'm looking for? Income qualified, that's it. It's not affordable, it is, but I think it's better to term it workforce housing, income qualified, because a lot of people think, oh, well, these people are just going to not work, they're going to sit there and basically live off the fat of the land. That is absolutely 180 degrees not correct. After 5 years, I think, when we're going to break ground, hopefully maybe early spring, and we're hoping that this project is really a catalyst for the whole downtown in Brunswick. But again, we had to fight. It was an uphill battle. We almost lost because we didn't get tax credits the first time around, and we went in and went, you can reapply. But again, it took a long time to educate people that the people that they're serving are the people that provide the services for them.
There's already some resources out here that you can use to help educate the community. Your local United Way has something called an ALICE data, which is asset limited, income constrained, employed. And that is, and I know staff has that too, that is illuminating to the general population because they don't understand, they have preconceived notions. You have that, and in all honesty, At Home in Adams County has done a lot to help, and SCAP to help get the word out about what the reality is. So I think there's some resources and there's a base to work from here. And in this particular county, I think that's a real value that a lot of counties don't have. So I do think, you're hearing all this gloom and doom, but I do think you have a base upon which to grow from. When you're speaking to communities, the first thing I hear is you're going to reduce the value of my home and you're bringing in crime. Okay, that's the first thing I hear. I heard that at Cumberland Township, the very first planning commission meeting I went to, and I put our plan out, which was just a sketch. I walked out the door, some woman followed me out and informed me that there's all kinds of drug activity and dangerous people living at Misty Ridge. And I know it's not true, okay? I know it's not true. I know that when you look at your areas within a community, there's crime everywhere, but people assume it's here. So what I always tell people, these communities, these homes, these rental properties, we have on-site maintenance, we have on-site property management, we have on-site supportive services people. We are there. We are not an absent landlord. It's the people that are building these apartment complexes that don't have those services that are absent are the ones you should be worried about, even if they're market rate. Because the control of what's happening in those units isn't like the control we have. Our units, every year, the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency comes in and they do a physical inspection on our property, and we get written up for things like you need to caulk the bathtub, you need to, you know, the door lock is loose, or, you know, your shingles are loose, or whatever that is. And your private landlords, they don't have that. So there's a real value to having organizations that can bring some beautiful housing to the community and make it sustainable. And those are the messages that need to be brought to the community. One thing I found that is very helpful when you're going into a community that's not familiar with this concept, they'll say, well, we want senior housing. Do you know why that is? Because their constituents aren't going to be calling them up on the telephone and screaming about crime and home values. All right, this is how it starts. So I'll say, okay, we'll do that, because what I find is once we get in the door and we put in a beautiful senior housing property and they see how wonderful it is, and you have your big open house, then it's easier to come back in and go in with general occupancy housing, because they've developed a trust in you, and that matters. The municipality, the politicians, they get to know who you are, and all of that matters. So it's a long game. It's the long game. It's not, oh, we're going to build this and next year have it. I mean, hopefully that happens, but it is a long game. And there are strategies that you all can employ, that we can employ working together, I think, to build on the base that you already have in this community, that I think is very positive. Heck, you've got transportation.
It's true.
In Franklin County, zero. Well, I shouldn't say zero. That's not quite true. Now we have rapid transit doing, I forget what it's called. The hopper. Yeah.
So you have heard us all describe what you probably have heard as NIMBY.
Yes.
Not in my backyard. One of the things that you can do, and that we always do, is accept that NIMBY will be there. Mm-hmm. We have never built anything that didn't have at least one person that didn't want us there. NIMBY has become more sophisticated in that municipalities have figured out how to use zoning, how to use regulations to stop affordable housing from even looking at their community. They've become very sophisticated until some old person like me says, you know, I'm not sure that qualifies under the fair housing constraints that everybody's supposed to be abiding by. Then you get the solicitor in and you have a discussion about what in the heck I was talking about. Affordable housing remains the only housing in America where you can stop it based upon the people who are going to live there. When you think about it, how many of you have ever in your lives been allowed to determine who's going to live next door to you if you rented an apartment or if you bought a home? It's illegal. You cannot do it. And yet, who's going to live in affordable housing is used by NIMBY individuals to say this is going to be bad. There's drugs, there's crime, there's everything you can think of associated with affordable housing. We think about it, affordable housing, nothing that we've built in the last 5 years has cost less than $16 million. So we're bringing $16 million of economic development into the community. We're hiring local subcontractors. We're hiring local labor. We're bringing that in, and yet we're not given credit for that at all. So you have to kind of embrace that NIMBY is there, and you have to figure out ahead of time what are the major touchstones that people are really angry about, and what do you have to say to convince them that we'll address that issue. Finally, on a positive note, there's never been a mayor or city council person who objected to us vehemently, said we don't want you here, who hasn't been the first person when we opened the doors to stand and say, this was the greatest thing, I knew this was going to happen. So the politics also is part of NIMBY. Mayors get reelected. City council people get reelected. You have to keep that in mind as you are developing your NIMBY strategy. You know, who's up for election, and this may be a sensitive subject this year. Does it mean that we wait and approach it next year? All of those are strategies that you need to think about, but just embrace, embrace the fact that NIMBY is here and it's never going to go away. So if you can do what you can do to combat it, then that mayor will be really, really grateful when he opens the doors.
3 key conclusions come out of the at-home conference, questions that community partner organizations will now work on and plan as they work together to address the housing challenges. Number 1, the county struggles to attract business and employees because of an inability to find housing, and housing that is in line with incomes. Secondly, businesses in our area lose employees because of housing instability. And a third and major issue for the Commonwealth and Adams County, our youth don't come back because wages in the county do not match the cost of living here. More discussions will be held and meetings arranged to deal with these critical issues about the future of Adams County. For Community Media, I'm Zeb Eckert.